Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome back. This is Multifamily Unplugged. It's Saturday morning, and I hope that you are having a great weekend and that things are away. I'm super excited about this morning's episode and our guest. We'll get to Bethany here in a minute. But, I always start in the morning and I talk about a word, right? Today, I want to just bring up the word trust. I think that as we get into today's conversation, trust will come up a lot in that. But I specifically want to talk about trust around picking partners. I see a lot of people, they show up at an event, they go to a seminar, they meet somebody for the first time and they say, hey, I think we'd be great partners. I've even seen it on the other end and had my own personal experiences where people have, I've had friends for multiple years, 20 plus years, go into business with them and trust gets broken. So I really believe that when you're putting together a team and you're picking partners for yourself and you're building your multifamily platform, that having people around you that you can trust is critically important. I know today my partner in my business and is somebody that I thoroughly trust. And that doesn't mean that we don't check on each other and we look at what each other's doing and talk about the movement of money and the progress on properties. But it does mean that you have to rely on somebody to give you that security that you're building in the right direction together, and your values and your values all align and that you're in the same direction. So we're going to get into that probably a little bit more today. But let me talk about my guest for a minute, Bethany LaFlam from Orange County, California. She's a partner in the Premier Law Group. She specializes in securities law, specifically for real estate syndicators. So you're in the right place if you're a real estate syndicator just getting started in the business or somebody looking to scale. Really excited about today's episode. Let me bring Bethany back in. Hey, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm great. It's great to see you again.
You too.
Super excited. I was on the phone this morning with my sister, and her son lives in Denver. And she was saying, man, they're expecting 2 feet of snow between today and Saturday. And I'm like, I'm so glad that I don't have to deal with that anymore. That, living in Southern California, most days it's 72 and sunny, right?
Yes, yes. It's crazy expensive to live here, and I just call it the weather tax. I'll pay it.
Yeah. Hey, so as I get started on all my podcasts and that, I always ask one question. And, I do this because my next book, right? And we're going to talk about your book today, but my next book is going to be that one word. And I always ask people at the beginning, what's the one word that best describes you personally, professionally?
So I've thought about that since, the 5 minutes ago, right? And I heard your word trust, and I really love that word. And I'm so happy that we're going to talk about that today. But I think for me, my word is audacious. And I know that sounds weird, like, wait, you're a lawyer. I mean, come on. Yeah. But the reality is I am audacious. I am more an entrepreneur, I think, than I am a lawyer. And I believe that if I really, really want something, I can do it. I can always do it. And I also believe that if you really, really want something and you want my help, I can help you get it. And so some people think that's audacious. So I think audacious is it's a word that I really like too. It's like, who the hell do you think you are?
Right. Yeah, it's kind of cool. It's like, hey, I thought you were humble.
No, I'm not.
Well, which is pretty evident by social media sometimes,
Yeah. No, that's really me. I think, within reason. Do I think I can do it all by myself though? No, I don't.
Yeah. Ask you a question. I think part of being audacious is you have to really not care what other people think, right?
Yeah. That's a challenge. I will admit I am sort of a recovering people pleaser, right? So I think audacious might have been me sort of swinging out from caring too much what other people thought. Like, no, I don't need to do that. And so that might have just maybe been a little bit of an overcorrection.
Yeah. I love that word though. And here's, I've been doing this for like 3 years. So I have, you know, a repertoire of words, right? And I don't think anybody's ever said audacious.
I don't know that it always has a positive connotation, but I think it should.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree. Yeah. I think it could be positive though. It could be really positive, right? Because it's what people perceive you, and that's what attracts people to you.
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, so why don't you talk a little bit about your background, Bethany, and your history, and how you, joined forces with Mauricio, and what you guys are doing today?
Yeah. So I've actually been practicing law. I hate even saying this because it ages me, but I've been practicing law for 25 years now. And I started off in, I started off in complex litigation. I really hated that. I hated trial work. And then I started doing mergers and acquisitions and securities law for tech companies, venture companies, really kind of like complicated, grinded out work, right? I was working, 2,500 hours a year kind of thing. So I left that. I was like, this grind, I don't want to do this anymore. And I actually went to start a fund. And it was just sort of this really brilliantly complicated fund, right? Legally sound and impossible to explain to anybody besides me, right? So you can imagine that didn't go well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, some are simpler than others. And this one was like, legally it was sound, but it was really hard to make people understand that. I learned that skill more over time of how to like simplify things for people. But you can imagine it didn't launch. It didn't go well because I wasn't able to really explain it. And it combined real estate with startups. And most real estate investors don't live in the same body as startup investors most of the time. Sometimes, yes, but for the most part, they want something separate, right? At least not in the same place. So that didn't go well. While I was trying to figure out my next move, licking my wounds from having failed at this fund epically, I was, mortified. I met Mauricio. And Mauricio was just coming out of being sick. Anybody who knows him knows that back in 2018, he was very sick. And he was a solopreneur at the time, the single point of failure in his firm. And it was a wake-up call for him that he needed some help and some support in running his firm if, because he's providing for his family, of course, and he needed some help. And I was like, all right, well, I don't want to practice law anymore. I hate it. I'm over it. But I will help you while I figure out what I'm going to do, because this stuff I can do in my sleep, right? So I started doing it, and I took on, we've been practicing the same amount of time. So I'm used to being in charge. And so I would handle more and more and more. And finally he was like, well, what would it take for you to just do this? And I was like, you can't afford that. I don't want to do it. And he's like, no, but seriously, consider it, right? What would you do? So I thought about it for a while. And I got to tell you, Mike, when I started meeting the clients in this space, the real estate syndicator clients, that's what made me fall in love with this again. I like helping people build something. I like helping people strategize. What I didn't like when I was in big law with tech and venture was being treated like the help. Right. So but with this community, I fell in love with these clients. They're mom and pop operators. They're just trying to get out of their W-2 job. They're building a legacy for their kids. They're not, trust fund kids that are launching yet another startup, in their basement with, $5 million in funding from mom and dad. Not that there's anything wrong with having a trust fund. I hope my kid has, a plethora of trust funds, right? There's nothing wrong with that. It's just, that's not what I wanted to do, right? I wanted to help people that grew up like I grew up, right? And build something from nothing. And that's when I fell in love with it. And I was like, all right, let's do this. And so we've been partners ever since. And we both got what we wanted out of it, I think.
Yeah. Well, knowing Mauricio the little bit that I do, and knowing you the little bit that I do, I see there's a great connection between you guys. Just the energy and the spirit between you. And I think that goes a lot to building a business, right? You've got to have that.
It does. I mean, you said the word trust earlier, and he trusts me and I trust him. And you can work through, look, all partnerships have challenges, right? They all do. We're humans. But if you have trust, you can work through almost anything, I think.
Yeah. Right. So let me ask you. So obviously when you guys first met, you didn't trust each other right from the get-go, right?
Yeah.
what do you think helped you build that level of trust to be able to, be where you're at today in business?
Both of us are a little hard-headed, and we're lawyers, right? So we're evidence-based people, right? I got to know him through his community, and people spoke so highly of him, right? And so he's got a good reputation. And then just almost like trial and error, we would do some projects. I started off just helping him, right? I wasn't a partner with him yet. I was just working with some of his clients, and so that little bit of I'll trust you this much, and then I'll trust you this much, and then this much. So it was a little bit of trial and error to see, can I trust you, and setting those boundaries. And I think it was really just interacting with the people that knew him, and then just examples of how he handled situations, right? And I think that's probably true of me. I think for him, it was harder to trust me, actually,
right?
Because that was this business he had already built. Right. And this was his already existing livelihood. I didn't even really want to do this. Like, what do I care? Right. He had to trust me.
So let's flip that question. What do you think you did to gain his trust?
I actually know exactly the moment that the switch flipped. And it was one of his long-standing clients. Mauricio was traveling a lot. He was trying to get back into it, and he's out speaking more, right? He loves to be out speaking, if you know Mauricio at all. Yeah. And so he was gone, and I was working on a client's deal. Well, I've been doing this for, forever as well. So I didn't feel the need to call Mauricio for every little thing. So I just handled the problem. And Mauricio came back and he said, so-and-so called me and said that he talked to you over the weekend and you handled this problem. And at first I thought, oh my God, did I overstep? This is his firm, not mine. I'm so used to being in charge that I was just like, I'll do it, And he was like, no, I've never been able to travel and just be left alone and have stuff be handled before. Thank you for just handling it. So it could have gone either way. Some people would have been like, how dare you overstep with my clients, right?
Right.
And
right,
he was like,
right.
no, thank you. Thank you for picking that up so that I could go be doing what I want to be doing.
Yeah.
So that was
awesome.
The moment where he was like, oh, okay, I can trust her.
Yeah. I have a partner, and her and I trust each other immensely. And it's pretty interesting because, we probably had we had entered into a real estate deal in Florida. And so we owned some multifamily together, and, really didn't like what was going on. And started in conversations about how could we build a business, and go to the next level and do it together. Mm-hmm. And I think that a year of conversation got us to a place where we went and bought our next deal. And now we're, a few hundred units into this partnership, and, have built this trust between each other, which is, that doesn't mean that we don't, check in on each other and what are you doing, what's going on, kind of like inspect what you expect, Yeah. And I think that the continued behavior of things going right and moving forward builds that. So
yeah, I agree. I mean, again, you're kind of testing boundaries as you go, and a business is not like a marriage, right? You can't just jump into it like, let's just do it and see what happens. Bad happen when you do that.
Well, that's what I said at the beginning. I've seen so many people, they go to a seminar, they go to an event, they meet someone, they go, hey, let's partners, what a great idea. And then, years later, they're not together anymore because they figured each other out. Right.
Yeah. And that's okay. It's just, it's harder to do that when you have investors,
Yeah.
It's
right.
Just
right.
hard. It's like with kids. What are you going to do with the kids?
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing in a romantic relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, just, different scenario. But hey, I like your comment about wanting to be in charge. I think that goes back to you being audacious, right?
Yeah. I think, and Mauricio's the same way. And so I think sometimes we're like, yeah, but no, I'm in charge, right?
Yeah, I could see that. So,
yeah.
Hey, so let's talk a little bit about, syndications and securities law, and, what do you think a new investor needs to watch out for in the world today?
The first, I think, most important thing you've already touched on, which is your partners. Be careful who you get in a partnership with. I see a lot of people, especially coming out of like coaching programs where they're learning how to do this, which is wonderful. I love that there are programs to help people learn how to do this so they can create a better life. But what happens is you get some people like, I don't know, it's like musical chairs. Whoever's the last one standing, I guess we're partners. And you getting into those partnerships, I think, takes away from actually operating the business. So the first thing I think is to very mindfully go into any partnerships. Be in a partnership, because if you're brand new to it, you need help.
Right.
Don't try to do everything yourself. You need other people. So that's the one thing. Find out what it is you're amazing at. And you might not know in multifamily yet. If you're new to multifamily, you might not know yet, but you generally know what kinds of things you're good at. Like, I am not going to ever be the underwriter. That's not going to be me ever. So I would have to find somebody who's really amazing at that. And I would need to do my diligence to make sure they really are, not just like, sure. And then the other part of that is, don't just go find partners that are capital raisers. Don't do it. You're not allowed to do it. Everybody has to have a real role in the business that's not just capital raising. And so it's not just, if I go find a capital raiser, we'll figure the rest out. That is not the first thing you need. That's actually the last thing you need. You need it for sure, but you need to know how to run a real business, because the only reason people are allowed to raise money from passive investors is to run a real business. That's why we're allowed to do this without a broker dealer license, right? And so people remember it that way. They remember, I'm doing this to run a business. You better figure out how to run that business before you raise that money, because that's what it's for.
Yeah. So that's interesting. I have a coaching platform, and every deal I'm in actually right now, my partner and I we're in with one of my coaching clients. Actually, my partner was one of my first coaching clients when I went into coaching business. Mm-hmm. So, I think it's a great way, my whole philosophy around it is teach people how to fish, right? And do it the right way, and then help them catch that first fish.
Yeah.
So,
and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. In fact, that's what most coaching programs are, right? It's like, hey, how can I arm people to go find me properties? How can I arm people to be a good partner? You're teaching people how to be a good partner to you, hopefully, right? So, I mean, that's a perfectly good way to find partners. I'm just saying you've got to build that trust and due diligence, because you're in it for 5 to 7 years usually, right? That's a long time if you figure out, ooh, I made a mistake.
Yeah. I think too, one of the things that new people get hung up on, or think they see so much stuff on social media about how to raise capital and market their deal, that they think, I can just go do that, right? But there's that difference between 506B, 506C. Can you talk about that a little bit? Just kind of bring some clarity around that for people.
Are you ready to skyrocket your investment portfolio and leave a legacy? Are you tired of inconsistent returns received in the stock market? Then it's time you take a look at alternative investment options, like a passive investment in multifamily real estate. No tenants, trash, or toilets. Just a solid return on an annual investment, including quarterly returns along the way. These lower risk and secure assets are also a great hedge against inflation. If you want to hear more about these types of opportunities, email me directly to schedule a 15-minute consultation to see if you qualify. You can email me at mike@mycoreintentions.com.
Yeah, absolutely. The general rule when you're raising money from passive investors is that if you're going to accept any investors who are not accredited, meaning they don't have the net worth or the income required that the government says, hey, these people are rich enough that they can, that they can withstand this loss. That's accredited. It's more than 200,000 of income annually for the past 2 years, and again in the same year, or more than $1 million in net worth, excluding the primary residence. Otherwise, everybody who owns a home in California is a millionaire, right? And so, or is accredited. So if you're going to accept anybody who's not accredited, the rule there is you're not allowed to generally solicit or advertise, right? No email list, no social media posts, no billboards, you've got to have a substantial pre-existing relationship with every single person you pitch this deal to if you're going to allow anyone, even one person who's not accredited. And even then, you're only allowed to bring in up to 35 of those, and everyone else still has to be accredited. So the government really, the SEC really limits how much money you can raise from what they kind of protect as more of a vulnerable segment of society, which is people who aren't accredited, right? So you see these people on social media talking about their deals. It better be a 506C, right? Mm-hmm. Where it's everyone has to be accredited. So we always advise our clients, just put on there, this is 506C for accredited investors only. So there's no question, right? It doesn't make Mauricio and I panic when we see it. Just say it so we all know, right? And then more importantly, if the SEC starts poking around, they could stop right there, right? Oh, I don't need to dig further because they know the rule,
Right.
And even then, when you advertise, you're allowed to advertise for 506C. You still have to be careful what you say. People think it's a free for all. You can say, we're not guaranteeing returns, right? We're not guaranteeing tax savings. We're not guaranteeing any certain kind of payment, even if it's a preferred return. That's not a guarantee, right? So the rule of thumb there is anything you say, first of all, of course, it has to be true, but it can't be misleading without further context. That's why you see all those annoying disclaimers on everything when a lawyer gets a hold of it.
Yeah. I love the word projected.
Yes. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah. Projected, right? Projected preferred. And, when it's pretty interesting when you're on a call with a passive investor, a new LP, they're, well, is this guaranteed? And how would you tell a investor respond to that question? If I say, hey, Bethany, is this return guaranteed? What's the guarantee on this?
So nothing in securities, nothing in investing is guaranteed. Unless it's a note secured by the property or personally guaranteed, it is not guaranteed. However, when you have a preferred return, so that's a lot of times what people think, oh, it's 8% guaranteed if I have a preferred return. And so all the preferred return means is if there's enough money to distribute, you're guaranteed to get yours first until you hit 8%. That's it. Right. You're not guaranteed to get anything, but if there is money, you're going to get yours first. That's the guarantee. So me as an operator, I won't take mine until after you've gotten yours.
Yeah. Right. At what point in the transaction should an investor come to you and say, hey, I'm going to put this deal together, or I bought this deal, or at what point in that process should somebody come and say, hey, how do I do this?
I really like to start talking to people when they're putting out LOIs, but they really don't need us until they've probably got a signed LOI. They've identified the actual property. They have a signed LOI, and then they're getting ready to go. Do it before the diligence period expires, because you have to leave yourself enough time to do the compliance paperwork, the offering documents, and then go raise the money. Right. So when you've got a signed LOI and you're fairly certain that you're going to do the deal, then we can start.
So how can't you start a deal like a 506B and then convert it to a 506C? How does it? There's a process around that, right?
Yeah, there is, and I love this for first-time syndicators too, because you can get mom and grandma in if they're not accredited, and then you can go advertise if you couldn't finish the whole deal. I don't know about you, but most of my family's not accredited, and I wouldn't be able to raise very much from them. So I would have to advertise, right? But if I wanted to let them come in, I'd have to start with a B. So what you do is you start off in stealth mode with people you know really well, that substantive pre-existing relationship, and you talk to them and you raise as much as you can there, right? One-on-one conversations, maybe a small webinar with personal invitations for the people you know well, and you raise as much as you can there. We put in the documents and we say, hey, this is what's going to happen. We're going to have a second class of investors. We're going to close down this 506B. We're going to create a new class for the 506C investors coming into the same property, same operating agreement, same company, right? Different PPM, right? Different risk disclosures. And then we shut the B down when you're done. And after that date that you shut it down, you're not accepting any more money from any non-accredited investors. And even the accredited investors that come in after that, you're going to now start verifying that they're accredited, because in a 506C, you have to verify they are. The minute you've advertised or generally solicited, 506B is off the table as an option. So you can never go the other way.
Yeah.
Right.
But when I have a 506B, I can let an accredited investor invest in that.
Oh yeah, for sure. If you know them.
I just can't advertise, right?
That's right. So people get that mistaken. They mistake that a lot. They say, "Oh, I'm going to do the non-accredited one." No, that's not what it is. It's that you can't advertise, and then you can accept some non-accredited, but you're probably going to always accept some accredited. You're not going to do a whole deal with only non-accredited investors. You can only have 35 of them.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of hard to fill a $5 or $10 million deal with all non-accredited. So, but it gives the non-accredited It gives the non-accredited some options though to invest and get their feet wet. And I always have, it's kind of interesting when I'm raising capital and people say, well, I'm not accredited, and maybe I have a 506B that I've been finishing the raise on. And, I say, well, you don't have to be, and my goal is to help you become accredited through helping you build your future wealth, So that's what I love about this business. And you kind of alluded to it early on, is that you're really helping people. You're helping people create wealth. You're helping people do business. You said helping people leave their W-2, so.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
or supplement it.
Yeah. What kind of paperwork is there that, investors need to fill out, or that you guys file, or, what does that look like?
So the SEC, when you're raising money from passive investors, there are three options to make sure that's legal, because you're not really, again, I told you there are very limited circumstances when you can do it. One of those is you're going to register the offering. That's like a public offering like Facebook or Microsoft. We're not doing that here. It's really expensive, takes a long time. That's not going to ever work with your 45-day diligence period and close. So we then have to go to the next level, which is an exemption. So we're not registering these securities. This is where we're talking about the 506B, 506C. It's a Reg D exemption from registering a security. What that means is you're not registering with the SEC, but you do have some other hoops you have to jump through to be allowed to do that. And the biggest one is you've got to disclose all the risks to your potential investors before they invest, right? So what that comes in the form of is a private placement memorandum. It's usually a pretty long, scary document that talks about all the risks of investing in this particular deal, the risks of investing in real estate, the risks of investing in securities, the risks of investing in this particular property with this particular operator, right? So this is not one of those check the box things of, I have a PPM. The PPM's got to be specific to the deal, right? Otherwise it's meaningless to the investor, right? Talks about what kind of fees and compensation the sponsor is going to get, all the things. So the PPM is the thicker document that's required to disclose risks to your investors. Then there's the operating agreement. That's just the agreement how everybody becomes members of the LLC that they're all partnering in, because your investors are partners with you, right? They're passive partners, but they're partners. So the operating agreement is that document that operates, right? That tells the investors and the sponsors how the rules are going to work once you are in business together. Then there's what's called a subscription agreement. That is the agreement that says, hey, as an investor, I'm agreeing to give you this money, right? And I understand I could lose it. This is how much, all that. So a subscription agreement is basically the contract that says, I'm giving you my money. And then the investor questionnaire is really for the issuer or the sponsor, their protection. You're going to get information from me as an investor to make sure I'm a suitable investor, right? So if it's a 506B, you at least want to make sure I'm sophisticated enough to get into this deal. You do not want to take someone's last $10,000. You don't want to take someone's $10,000 who has no clue what's going on. There are rules against that. So I have to be at least sophisticated. If it's a 506C, then you need to have me fill it out so that you have information about me. You have to take even an extra step and then go make sure I'm accredited. So that's the packet of documents you're getting. And then you probably started the whole process. I call it a business plan, but it's really it's a pitch deck. It's a Canva or a PowerPoint slide deck that says, hey, this is a beautiful and amazing property. We're amazing operators. You should invest with us. That's the marketing document. We attach that to all of these other documents because they should all be consistent, right? Mm-hmm. Whatever I disclose in your PPM better match what you're telling people you're going to do in your business plan. So we put it all together.
Yeah, it's interesting. And you help investors put all that together, and then you do the SEC filing for them, right?
Yeah. So after that, we let the SEC know, hey, we are raising money, but it's under an exemption. So that's called the Form D. And then we'll do the blue sky filings, which every state wants to know, are you raising money in our state? And then they want a fee, right? So we file those for people too.
Yeah. Yeah. So every state you have to file blue sky in.
Yeah.
And that's just making that state aware that you have an investor that from that state that's going to invest in your deal.
Yeah. So it kind of puts everybody on the radar, make sure that there's no fraud going on, or, all the things. And of course, it's a revenue generator for the state. Some states are more than others. So I always tell people, if you're raising money in New York, for example, you should get lots of investors in New York, because you have to pay $2,000 anyway, and you only pay the one time. So if you have one investor or 20 investors in New York, it's the same fee.
How about, does that kind of run the same way like on the institutional level? So we're talking really about LPs, limited partners, those passive investors, but how about when you start to go into the family office funds or into, institutional money? Are you still filing blue sky on those, or?
No, that's a little bit of a different process. And most of our clients they're mostly retail investors, like the passive LPs that were individuals. So we're not really dealing with that. But usually with the family offices and the private equity firms and that kind of thing, they've got their own protections set up. And so it's sort of a different beast.
Yeah. Okay. So everything, what's interesting is that everything you do has got a different process.
Kind of. I mean, I'm a process person, so I really like to have as much of process as possible, just because it helps us get our clients' documents done faster and cheaper. But yeah, it's a little bit different depending on what you're doing. So for example, if you're going to advertise, we do it a little bit differently than if you're not going to advertise. But for the most part, the securities laws are the securities laws. So the process isn't going to change wildly. It's just the contents that's going to change a little bit.
Yeah. So I just, I encourage everybody that when they get to the point where they're going to bring a deal out or they get a deal under contract, to immediately get in touch with, you and Mauricio, and get that process started so that they stay legally compliant, right?
Yeah. And I'll add right there, sorry to cut you off. I'll add there, we also help people stay compliant when they're talking about their deal. So the SEC regulates the offer and the sale of securities. So when you're out talking about your deal with your pitch deck, on a webinar, on social media, on a podcast, right? We make sure that you know what you are and are not allowed to say. So it's not just, here's a stack of documents, have fun, right? We're helping you stay compliant from jump, right? All the way up until you're filing those Form Ds and the blue skies.
Yeah, interesting. Now, I think you have a new book out or coming out, don't you?
I do. I have a book. It's getting released in January. It's called The Power of OPE, the exponential growth from other people's everything. So we talk about OPM a lot in this community. And I kind of added to that other people's everything. And I think that is the best way to scale and exponentially create wealth. Interesting.
Any highlights from it you want to share?
I talk a lot about your team building and sort of the other people that you do want, but the other people that you don't want, right? The beginning part of the book is actually, here's the other people's stuff that I don't want you to take on, right? Other people's goals for you, other people's negativity, other people's expectations of you, things like that. The book is really trying to encourage people to dig deep and figure out what their lane is. What are you both amazing at and what lights you up both, right? Because we're entrepreneurs. We're probably good at a lot of crap that we don't want to do, right? That we don't love. We can do it because we have to because we're entrepreneurs. But the whole idea behind true success and exponential growth is to try to stay in that lane that you created that does both. You're amazing at it and it lights you up. And I can promise you that there are other qualified, amazing people that are good at all those other lanes that don't light you up. For example, I know people that are really great underwriters. They love it, lights them up. They're amazing at it. Why would I try to do it if you're good at it and want to do it? I'm doing you a disservice by trying to do something worse myself than letting you shine in your lane, right? And so the whole idea is to allow yourself to, and that's a big thing, allow yourself to choose your lane be intentional about it, but then allow yourself to stay in it. That's tough because we're entrepreneurs. And a lot of times we think that hustle and grind culture requires that we just do everything ourselves and we let everybody know how hard we're struggling and we let everybody know how tired we are and how busy we are. And that's how we know we've made it. And that's garbage. It's garbage.
Yeah.
You're just tired and grouchy, right? So I think we all get to thrive.
Yeah, I think, I just kind of had that conversation with someone this morning about, being able to delegate, right? And have other people do things. I have a great assistant. And, I know in my life that if I didn't have that person, that I wouldn't be able to do half of what I do, right? But you have to be able to delegate. And I love what you said about figuring out what you're good at. If you're the underwriter, if you're the capital raiser, if you're the compliance person, just figure out what you're good at and go find other people that are good at the other stuff. Yeah. And that's how you build a great team. Kind of funny how we circled back to that conversation from earlier in the show, right?
Yeah. I mean, it takes discipline. I think it takes even more discipline to not jump in other people's lanes as it does to the same discipline. If you're like, oh, I have to do it myself and I've got all this discipline and that's why I'm doing whatever. It actually takes more discipline to let somebody do their thing because we all want to be in charge, right? We're all entrepreneurs. Probably most of us are visionaries. We want to be in charge. And it's like, put your blinders on and stay in your, now every once in a while, check, make sure everything's okay. Nobody's drowning over there. Right. But even then, even if someone, this is the hardest lesson, I think for me, it was the hardest lesson is just to let go, because even if someone in that lane is drowning, me jumping in there with them is just going to make us both drown.
Yeah.
Right. What can I do from my lane to help them? That's what you've got to focus on. And I think that takes more discipline than just jumping in that lane with them because you want to be in charge,
Yeah, I love that philosophy. It's pretty good. So, hey, couple bonus questions here as we wind down. So, Southern California, favorite restaurant?
Oh, easy. Christakis. It's a Greek restaurant in Tustin. It's run by a Greek family. And they took it over from mom and dad who've since passed. And it is the best Greek food that I've had outside of Greece ever. Wow. And it's every occasion. My daughter and I go there for birthdays, for Mother's Day. Very favorite restaurant.
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. I'll have to get that from you and check that out. So,
yeah.
And then, there's a lot you can do in Southern California, a lot of places to go. Best tourist attraction?
Ooh, I'm a beach girl. So, I mean, I'm always down for just a good old fashioned beach. Thousand Stairs Beach and Laguna Beach is really nice. It's a pain to get to, as you can understand by the name Thousand Stairs. But as a result, it's not usually very crowded. So I definitely just love, other than parking, it's free to go to the beach. So I do love that. I'm not much of a shopper. There's really good shopping in Orange County. I don't like to shop, so that's not my jam. But if it is yours, then Fashion Island has everything you could ever want. But I would rather be walking barefoot at the beach than shopping.
Oh God, it's just like my heart. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Hey, I appreciate you being here today. This has been great. Why don't you tell people how they get a hold of your book, get a hold of you if they have questions or they want to engage your firm?
Yeah, absolutely. If you follow me on Instagram, that's the easiest way to get access to everything that I'm doing. And that is Bethany, BETHANY _LaFlam, LAF like Frank, LAM like Mary. You can get all the resources and tools there. And in fact, if you're listening and you want to figure out how to take strangers, like people listening to this podcast, and turn them into 506B eligible investors, I'll give you 8 steps to turn a stranger into a 506B eligible investor for free.
Awesome. And they can get that by just following you on Instagram?
Yeah, if they follow me on Instagram, they can just DM me 8 steps.
Great. Awesome. All right. Well, listen, hey, I appreciate you being here today. This has been great. I'm going to move you out and say goodbye. If you'd hang out with me in the back room for a minute, that'd be great.
Thanks so much. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, everybody. That was a great episode. We got to talk about trust. We got to talk about team building and relationships. relationships, and you know what? It kind of brought some light to securities law and didn't make it so dry. You know, that's always my concern when you start to get into some details that it can be dry, but I think we brought a life to it that just really educational for people. Hey, remember, we're here every Saturday, Multifamily Unplugged. You can follow us on Facebook in the Facebook group, where we're always bringing great content and information out. If you're new to the show, please subscribe to us on YouTube or any of the social media platforms you're on. But we're always bringing you something that you can learn, something that you can grow from, or a great guest. Thanks for being here. Have a great week.